BC, let's hop into Nebraska, Indiana here this week. Obviously, a lot of talk about Indiana start to the season. I'm going to ask you the same question we asked about Rutgers.
Okay.
Do you think Indiana is better than we think they are, not as good as they think they are, or as we think they are, or exactly as good as we think they are, as kind of a fan base culture Nebraska area?
Okay, if I were to take what the average, what I've heard from everybody, put it together with the averages, I would say as good as people think they are. I think there's a good respect level for them, but there's also a thought that this game can be had. People know Nebraska is going to have to play really well. Perhaps you've gotten a different vibe from callers early this week than I've gotten, but I think there's a nodding respect to Kurt Signitti and an understanding that he played the transfer game really well with his James Madison guys, and then getting Rourke in there at QB and how it's all come together. And I know that the first thing is, but the schedule. However, I think they've handled their business quite efficiently, is what I'd say. And whenever you score more than 41 points in 3 Big Ten games, I don't really care. I care a little bit, but who the Big Ten teams are that you play, that gets you to notice. So I think there's a healthy respect, and obviously the people are throwing in their money at this game kind of think that too. The spread's moved up a little, and I think it was at 6.5 last night. Last story I was writing.
So here's the thing, BC. So Nebraska, if we were going to describe Nebraska's kind of their prowess over I use that term loosely, just what their results over the last 10, 15 years, is inefficient a word that you would use? That's just kind of a yes or no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that works fine.
So is one of the things that you think we're so worried about with Indiana is maybe not top flight talent, but because they are so efficient? Like this looks like a team that we've kind of worked ourselves up over because they just don't make a ton of mistakes.
Yeah, that's part of it. And to further your point, sometimes opponents of Nebraska do get made into be, like the Patriots when they're trying to go undefeated type of stuff. This is obviously not that. I just think they, you got to respect a team when they're winning by double digits against other Big Ten foes, and you look at their red zone numbers and, again, the competition. But that's what jumps out to me is they've been in the red zone 37 times, which is the most in the FBS. And I know they have that outlier game against Western Illinois where they scored 77. That kind of skews the numbers. But they've scored 30 times of the 37 trips touchdowns in the red zone. Nebraska's defense, you heard Ty Robinson talk about it the other day, their mentality down there, they're not getting in, haven't allowed a rushing touchdown down there, and have only allowed touchdowns in 6 of 13 trips from opponents there. So I think that's an interesting game within the game. When you talk about efficiency from the other side, can Nebraska sort of cut that off a little bit? And, there's going to be a series, I assume, early in this game or within the first quarter, early second quarter, where Indiana's down there, around the 15, 20-yard line. Can Nebraska, in a moment or 2 or 3 like that, turn away Indiana, sort of force them to take their medicine and take 3 points? And maybe it's one of those sequences where in the moment your Husker fans are a little like, they got some points, but I think that could be the difference between winning and losing, those sort of scenarios in this game, not breaking in those moments.
BC, what are you expecting to see from Indiana's offense, just in the sense of this is by far the best defense they'll face this year, but up to this point, they've really been able to do whatever they want against their competition in terms of putting points on the board. Like, how are you weighing those two factors to get an idea of what you'll see on Saturday?
Well, I'm just heavily intrigued by it because I'm not selling Nebraska's defense low at all. I think, this is the type of game they've been building for. I think they can be disruptive and make Curtis Rourke more uncomfortable than he's been.
Yeah.
And it's just about, I always think that D-line, I think it was Rule who said, he saw the TV tape of James Williams after his one sack where he gets up and he's pointing at Jamari Butler because Butler made a move that opened up the lane for James Williams to make his move. And I feel like if this D-line and sort of that front is playing together with that type of chemistry and the type of tenacity that they're capable of, they're going to definitely have their moments, too, where they make things very uncomfortable for Indiana. So this is one of those good-on-good matchups, at least how it looks on paper. And sometimes the fun part is you go into a game like that thinking it's good-on-good, and then you find it's good on average, or, you know, and so we'll see, like, who gets the upper hand there and who actually flexes. But there's no reason Nebraska's defense shouldn't go into it confident and excited about the opportunity, too, to, you know, all right, let's see what you got. We feel pretty good about what we got.
So, BC, let me ask you something about, like, just kind of listening to Coach White, and he's talking about the guys flying around, and it was pretty spirited. And a lot of people have tried to break this down into blank versus blank in terms of the key matchups. For you, would you start with Nebraska's special teams, their offense, or their defense if they want to come out with a win? How do you rank those in order for me?
Oh, boy. Man, I dare say I'd put offense 1, and that's maybe going against the grain a little. Special teams 2 and defense 3, because I just think defense is going to show up and at least do their part. And
that's interesting too, because we're probably the most worried about Indiana's offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's because of they have some gaudy numbers and all that, but Nebraska's defense does too. So again, a good on good. We'll see where that maybe it shakes out pretty evenly, maybe not. But I think Nebraska's offense, you know, there's a little worry there too, just because of the second half and how it kind of finished. It was really interesting hearing young Dylan talk the other day.
Young Dylan.
About he's mature though, and he was talking about that game, the second half against Rutgers, and it was like he had that quote where it's like, yeah, it felt like the end of the season. You know, like you can tell like he had such a standard, and it was difficult for him to have to sit with that one for a few days and then extra week actually. And so I think he's chomping at the bit to get back out there and play and put a better foot forward with this offense. And a big part of that, though, 1 and 2, you could almost say 1 and 2 have to be married together, like the offense and special teams. Like Nebraska's special teams obviously has to avoid the catastrophes that Rule talks about, but just as much it's going to come down to can you be the unit? And Buschini did really well when they weren't having punts blocked at pinning the other side deep and making Indiana drive it. And on the other hand, Nebraska's offense in that Rutgers game, if you think about why it was part of the reason it was so stale, they started drives at the 2, 3, and 5 yard line on like 3 of the 5 possessions that, you know, they had. So that's going to be a big part of it, is hopefully they get a little field to work with. And then you talk about efficiency, that's where they have to excel on third down, keep Indiana off the field, and just have some drives that, you take up a little time and you get in a rhythm and kind of get Indiana off theirs. Help your defense out too.
BC, as much as I hate to admit it, DB brought up a good point here about most people being worried about the defense of Nebraska versus the offense of Indiana. But the most recent thing we saw was Nebraska's offense struggling against Rutgers. And we haven't brought up a ton that Indiana's defense quite highly rated as well this year. What level of concern, if any, do you have about Nebraska's offensive performance on Saturday?
Yeah, that's why I put them 1 on my list, because that's the group. I'm not saying I don't think they can get it done. I'm just a little more prove it. Like let's see that consistency for 3 to 4 quarters. How about that? Because I think the offense has sort of had these disjointed games where you felt good about a quarter here, quarter there, or a half here. But can this be the game where it feels pretty solid for 4 quarters? And there's just sort of that consistent drumbeat there. And so, the short to intermediate passing game hopefully is in rhythm. I think that's going to be a big part of it. hopefully you're getting yourself into like 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s, and you really test Indiana out to see if they can actually get off the field in those settings, because I think Nebraska's got the weapons with Banks and Nair, and I think Pedoni has kind of quietly been coming on here and there in that offense where they can get some things done. So I'm excited for that matchup. I think Nebraska can move the football, but I put them one on that question Damon asked, because they're the group I actually have probably wondered more about this week than any other. And obviously special teams, that's the mystery sucker. That's the sucker that's like in the purple wrapping, with a question mark. We gotta open that up, and it's gotta be something good this week.
Oh, I was kind of more of a butterscotch barrel guy myself, but anyway.
Well, hopefully it is. See, that's it. The one where you don't know what it's gonna be, or hopefully it's butterscotch. Yeah.
Who's choosing butterscotch candy?
That was kind of my jam for those dum. You talking about the dum-dums, right? Those were
any butterscotch.
Like
get out of here.
Bill Gin dum-dums is what I think of. Yeah.
That's my buddy Chad. I had a good buddy, Chad Morford. We would walk to Goodrich, and I would get butterscotch malts. That was like my jam when I was a kid.
Ugh.
We got to remember, man, like BC, didn't every – I was going to say every black kid. You're like, well, how would I know? Didn't everybody – you're a butterscotch guy, BC. Like, didn't everybody have, like, the Brock's butterscotch discs and the little strawberry candies? Like, that was the jam, wasn't it, BC?
Yeah, what was that? You're like BC, you went to Omaha North. Tell me about the butterscotch.
Comes first full circle. That's all that. That's all that diversity you hung out with. You learned to love butterscotch, right?
Oh,
I did.
You're the goat,
like
B.
Is that where the Werther's thing came from?
You get some Jim's Rib Haven, and you get a little butterscotch to finish it off. I think butterscotch. It might be is it generational at all? Because like I feel like grandparents of my generation, and maybe some parents like had more butterscotch like out on the coffee table or something like that, like treats. So maybe that's it.
Yeah,
I'm trying to move the conversation a different direction.
I think it might be a generational issue, BC. I think you're right.
So B, when we're talking about Nebraska offensively, you think shot plays and the willingness to take some shot plays come before an established run game, or do you think the established run game comes before the shot plays when you look at how much zone or how Indiana likes to play defense, at least statistically?
I definitely think some shots could come early, and I was just thinking about a guy like Jalen Lloyd during the break, this bye break, and how last year we were a little bit spoiled because he had like the 6 catches, but like 3 of them were just unbelievable explosions of like 58 yards. And it feels like something like that, too. He's been close on a couple that he's had, on the fake punt and all that stuff. So I just could see like a wild card like him popping up for a big play early in this game. Ja'Cory obviously is capable of it. And, this is also that stretch where Nair and Banks came in here. They've done some good things. You've seen that they can win 50-50 balls and stuff like that. But this might be that portion of the season where they've gotten some more comfort with their quarterback, and let's see if this thing can take off to another level a little bit. And so I think Nair is a tough matchup, for them and I could see him getting loose for a deep one, and maybe that does open up the run game. So it wouldn't bother me if Nebraska tests out, Indiana with the long ball once or twice early, and at least to keep them honest, and then kind of work off of it.
Wait, BC, so you're telling me that you don't have to establish the run game in order to make everything else work? Sometimes it can work backwards.
Well, I understand you got to play the cat and mouse and see what they're giving you, and maybe it goes the other way, but definitely that can sometimes be the case. And so if we see a long throw early and it's incomplete, you kind of can nod your head to it and say that there can be a purpose to it still. So obviously it's better if you hit, but I understand if you want to spread them out a little bit, make them think about it, let them know you're going to do that. It wouldn't shake me up at all if I saw that. And I think Nebraska's got some guys who have more plays in their bag with that sort of thing, and some of the explosives in the pass game than we've actually seen so far this season. So we'll see if some of that can come out Saturday.
You see, it's interesting too. This may be a good case. I was going to say test case or case study, so I said test case. Of the whole Nebraska factor after you play a team, because Indiana, health-wise, has managed to stay relatively healthy. I know they'll probably get their linebacker back this week because of the bye week, but they play a lot of the same guys. Their player participation sheets they play their guys well into the fourth quarter. I'd be curious to see what happens the week after a team like Indiana plays Nebraska. Unfortunately, Nebraska has to get them first. You know what I mean? But this would be one of those times where context matters when you apply something to a trend.
Yeah, it does. But also within this game, you can test that out a little bit and they say, okay, let's see if that lack of depth or I guess just rotation development that you've got going so far this season, if that works against you on this Saturday, where you get to the third or fourth quarter and maybe you are starting to pop some runs and you get into that 75 plus rushing yards late in the game. So all sorts of interest. I'm also interested, guys, how a program like Indiana, which I'm very respectful of their team, but they're not used to like a big noon setup on their campus and all this stuff with football. Sometimes that works against the program that's new to it, and they don't respond as well when they've got that environment sort of in the air. So I think there's a lot of things that are a good setup for Nebraska psychologically in this game. You just got to go in there and handle your business, do what you can do, and I think they can win it.
That's Brian Christopherson, Husker247, who started all these problems by open enrolling back in 1995. Thanks a lot, BC.
It's my fault. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, B.
Thanks for having me.